to the Rapport Podcast Network.
The Oklahoma Sooners had a bye week, yes, but there was a lot that happened in the SEC. How does this all affect the Sooners? We're going to talk about it here on the Sooner Spotlight. Welcome in, Sooner Nation, to another episode of Sooner Spotlight. We are live, so please jump down in that live comment section, the live chat real quick, and we will try to get to as many chats as we can. Appreciate everybody for pulling up here. Kind of an odd time to go live, but why not? We didn't have a game this past week, but there was a lot going on in the SEC. And it was a lot of fun to see. There was a lot of shakeups. We're going to talk about all of that and much more, get into it and how it affects the Oklahoma Sooners going into this week and beyond. We're going to talk about it here in just a moment. But first, go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Like I said, we're live, so jump in the live chat down below. If you're not watching live, still jump in the comments. We will still get to every single one of the comments that we possibly can. We've had a wide abundance of comments in the past, but we try to get to each and every one of them. So please jump in that comment section. It helps us out tremendously. You can always follow me on social media. I'm over on X, formerly known as Twitter, at @RealJoshMahler. Go check me out over there for all updates on the show and much more. And of course, you can always go over to Soonerspotlight.com and check out everything that we do. You can even find a merch shop where, guess what? It's Texas Hate Weeks. So I don't know if you can see that. Maybe if I pull the microphone up out of the way just for a second. Texas, you can buy the vowel. Okay, so buy the vowel. Anyways, there's so much more. That's one of them for Texas Hate Week. Funny story for Sooner fans. I'm sure you guys will appreciate this. I had my Baker Mayfield shirt, the one that it's got Baker Mayfield planting the flag in the SEC. So it's totally just meant for, hey, we're in the SEC. We're planting our flag here, right? I went to an Ohio State game with my in-laws. They're all Ohio State folk. My wife graduated from Ohio State, so my wife and I went with my in-laws, went to the Ohio State game, and I realized after I was already heading there, I'm wearing this shirt, and Baker planted the flag there. I was blessed to be able to be there in that moment, and what was funny is I was even recording up into the moment, and then I saw him going to midfield and got too excited and put my phone down. Anyways, I'm wearing that shirt of Baker planting the flag at Ohio State this past weekend, which was quite a bit of fun. Didn't get as many threats as I thought that I would get, but definitely a lot of fun, a lot of glares, a few people kind of joking about the shirt, all fun, and it was a pretty good time anyways. But let's get into it. We've got a lot to talk about when we get to just overall everything that happened here in the SEC this past week. We're going to talk about the bye week recap because we don't have a game of our own, which we would have done last night, but since we didn't have a game, I was trying to think of a good way to put this all together. I was actually still traveling on my way back home from Ohio yesterday, and so whenever I got home, I just didn't have the energy, and I was supposed to try to go see my family, my little sister's birthday, so all kinds of things. We're hopping on tonight. We're doing a live show. So again, jump in that live chat. We will try to get to as many comments as we can today. Let's first start off with the Texas A&M whooping up on Missouri. I mean, this game was really just a very odd one for many people. I mean, I think I was talked into the idea that Missouri should be a good team this year. And I thought, you know what? They're 4-0. I get, they're ranked in the top 10 and they're staying there. Everybody believes in Missouri. I've gotten a lot of flack, I guess, throughout the season for talking about Missouri and just saying I don't see it. I've said that here on camera many times here on this show and others as well, where I just don't see it from Missouri. I don't really see what there is to be worried about, and I don't think they're a top team in the SEC, let alone in the country. So it's just I just don't see it. I mean, I know they've got some playmakers, but they don't have an entirety of a roster when you compare them to teams like Alabama or LSU, Georgia, Oklahoma, Texas. I just don't see it from them. I honestly think Auburn has a better roster. Of course, their coaching is horrendous right now, but I think Auburn has a better roster than Missouri. So I really haven't seen it from Missouri the entire time. Brady Cook didn't have a bad game. overall, I mean, I just felt like there just was no good chemistry. I guess he did have a bad game. I should say it that way. I mean, he wasn't able to put up even 200 yards, couldn't even hit that 50% mark, just didn't have the chemistry. And, I look at what they did on the ground, not really being able to run the ball well at all. For Missouri, only being able to run the ball, I mean, a total of 68 total yards against this Texas A&M team. You've got to be able to find a way, and Oklahoma fans know this better than anyone, to have a good balance between the run and the pass, and being able to get over that century mark is really big, and it's a big part of just getting the defense to be honest and respect both aspects of your game. And for Texas A&M Missouri not being able to get past Texas A&M's front, I think Texas A&M did a really good job there. Texas A&M also owning the time of possession by over 7 minutes in this game. I thought that was a really good game plan overall. I think on top of that, just the cojones of Mike Elko to put Connor Wagman in, even though, a lot of people not really happy with him, how he started the season, just not really liking his performance, takes him out, but then he ends up putting him back in for this game. Man, this just goes to show how much of a true head football coach Mike Elko is, to know where his players are based on where they are in practice and where they should be in real time whenever you get to game time. So, I thought that Mike Elko did a really good job with that. And then, just overall being able to convert your third downs. Us Oklahoma fans know that as well, where, only 30% of the time Missouri was able to complete a first down on third down. So where, you go over to the other side and Texas A&M was 7 for 12. They looked really good. They looked like a well-rounded team, and they just kept on going. They scored double digits in their first 3 quarters. Still scored a touchdown in the fourth quarter, sealed it off. Texas A&M won 41-10. A lot of people just didn't see that coming. Most people didn't. I didn't see that coming. I don't have a lot of faith in Missouri. I don't think Missouri's a very good team. I'll keep on saying that throughout the season until they prove me wrong, and I just don't think that's going to happen. But I don't think Missouri is a very good team, but I think I would have trusted in Missouri a lot more in this game than I trusted in Texas A&M. Texas A&M hasn't really shown me that they're a really big, really good program. They beat Arkansas, but that was kind of close and all based off of that strip sack. If that doesn't happen, Arkansas has a really good chance to win that game. So not really a compelling resume up to this point. So a little shocking, to say the least. Overall, I think I would have expected that to at least be a really good game, especially with everybody else trying to convince me that Missouri is a good team. Missouri thinks they're a good team. Missouri fans think they're a good team. I just don't see it. And obviously, getting beat by Texas A&M and a Texas A&M with a first-year head coach and Mike Elko and a lot of new pieces over there, it's not looking good for Missouri because you lose to Texas A&M, and I understand it was on the road, so you don't have that home field advantage. You can use that as an excuse, I guess, if you want. Regardless, losing by 31 points is just not acceptable for a top 10 team. If you're talking like you're in the top third of the SEC and you believe that you should be there, I'm not seeing it from Missouri. So that one, I think that one has a little bit of an impact on Oklahoma just because you look at Missouri. We've got them coming up on the schedule. The more I look at Missouri, the more I think Oklahoma has a really good shot to beat Missouri. I don't see how Oklahoma can't overcome Missouri. I don't care if it's in Columbia. Missouri's not as good of a team as Oklahoma. Oklahoma's far better. I just don't see it. So as far as Oklahoma goes, when we look forward into the season, we can do that as fans. Can't let the team do that, but us as fans, we can do that. We can look ahead a little bit and see what we've got going on. Anyways, for Missouri, I don't see a whole lot of a threat there, and this proves my point that I just don't see that big of a threat from Missouri. They do have some good playmakers, Luther Burden, Theo Weiss. We know how good Theo Weiss could be, but I just don't see it from Missouri now. Sitting at 1-1 in the conference, 4-1 overall. I think Oklahoma's better. Going on to a team that we just played and just beat last week in amazing fashion. Of course, we would have liked to beat them a little more comfortably than we did, but Auburn ends up losing to Georgia. They really kept this thing close, and it felt like they might have a little bit of magic coming out in the second half, and it just didn't happen. Auburn ultimately, I feel like a lot of this, you talk to Auburn fans, you talk to people who support and even watch a lot of Auburn football, and what they're noticing and what they're really trying to harp on here is it just feels like an offensive error here. And there's a lot of respect lacking between player and coach, and I think between player to player as well, where, I brought this up with Peyton Thorne. I really don't like Peyton Thorne yelling at Hugh Freeze on the sideline and also yelling at his young receivers, and kind of showing that you can have those talks, you can have those discussions, you can even be yelling at each other and getting those kinds of arguments, but that has to be behind the scenes. You're not allowed to do that on national television. That's just my personal opinion. You need to show respect to your coaches and to your teammates too. I don't think it does any good to sit there and yell at them whenever they maybe have some sort of miscommunication. So I think a lot of it is building up. I think a lot of that frustration is building up for Auburn, and of course, nobody really expected Auburn to come off and pull off the upset to Georgia. Georgia was pretty ticked off for how things ended with Alabama, really how they started with Alabama, and now moving on to this week, they just wanted to get out with another win and a comfortable win at that, and that's exactly what they did, winning 31-13. Able to do really well. Again, third down conversion. I mean, I'm going to keep on looking at that because, again, us Oklahoma fans know how crucial that's been for us this season. And now you look at what Auburn was doing, 4 for 13 on third downs, where their defense on the other side couldn't get off the field on third downs, letting Georgia complete over 50% of their third downs, 7 for 13 for Georgia. And then, Georgia also completed both of their fourth down conversions. They went for it twice, got it twice, and so that's another thing that you look at, and you have to recognize that. And another thing for Auburn that I'm seeing a pattern that I'm hearing from their fans, hearing from media personnel, people that I know of from the War Report, and looking at all of that, what they're noticing is that they're not giving Jarquez Hunter the ball nearly enough, and in crucial moments when he should be getting the ball. Yeah, that's something. I mean, he only had 13 carries. He was able to get 91 yards off those 13 carries, which is a pretty good game. Scoring a touchdown on the ground as well. But, just not giving him the ball enough. I mean, a guy like that should be getting the ball 20 times if you need it. Because in games like this, you need it. You need to have the ball in your hands and in the best player's hands. And that best player is Jarquez Hunter. So, yeah, I definitely think that that's just something that has been harped on over and over again throughout the season, and we see it again. Ultimately, Georgia ended up winning that one. No surprise there. Going on to Ole Miss, South Carolina. Two teams that we've got coming up. We've got South Carolina next weekend, not this upcoming weekend, but next, and then Ole Miss just shortly after that. I can't remember if that's the game directly after. I can actually pull that up really quick because I've got it right here. Looking at their roster. Yeah, so it'd be the weekend after South Carolina, we've got Ole Miss. So two teams that we've got coming up, looking at Ole Miss and seeing that they went down to Kentucky the week before. They had a little bit of a redemption story this week, able to do a lot of good things against South Carolina and just shut South Carolina down. Ultimately, for South Carolina, what I see is they've got a terrible offensive line. That's something that Oklahoma can capitalize on big time. We've got a defense that loves to get pressure in through that offensive line, and that interior going to be able to push in. So what South Carolina showed against Ole Miss is that offensive line really hasn't improved much from a year ago when Spencer Rattler was constantly on his back. So, yeah, definitely something that I'm looking at, and I think for South Carolina, we've got a very good chance against that offensive line who is just looking atrocious one more time this season. So definitely something for us to look forward to in that South Carolina game. Ole Miss, on the other hand, I still think that Ole Miss is going to be a very tough team to play. I think they're just such a well-rounded team, and you look at how they're able to run the ball still with Parrish, and the way that he's able to run the ball, and they've got a couple of other guys that can touch the ball and get going in the run game as well. But then Jackson Dart, he's just been very overall, taking out that Kentucky game, I think Jackson Dart has been very confident and very consistent throughout this season so far. He's impressed me. I think that Jackson Dart's looked a lot better this season. I don't know if I'd put him in the top 10 quarterbacks in the country or anything, but he's looked a lot better. And so that's another thing, is looking at how well-rounded Ole Miss can be. I mean, you look at what they had here. I mean, kind of splitting their average between run and pass, just doing a really good job of being able to mix it up. And Lane Kiffin is a very good offensive mind when it comes to putting together a game plan and helping his offensive coaches. He does a really good job, and I saw that very much here, just being able to control the ball in moments where you need to. And what was crazy about this is that South Carolina, I mean, ultimately it came down to South Carolina's offense not being able to do anything with big moments, just constantly getting too much pressure on the quarterback, the young quarterback in Sellers. And then they even put Robbie Ashford in, a transfer from Auburn, who came over here to South Carolina, and he didn't look very good either in the game, and just nothing seemed to be going for the offense of South Carolina. Ultimately, that's what you see there in that game. So Ole Miss ends up winning that one 27-3. Two teams that we're going to see back-to-back after this Red River rivalry this week, which I guess we haven't done it yet, so we can go ahead and throw those horns down, because this is a horns down podcast, guys. And we got 2 weeks of horns down. So, man, I couldn't get my pinky down there. 2 weeks of horns down. This is Horns Down Hate Week, Rivalry Week Part 2. So that's been a lot of fun being able to celebrate it for 2 weeks. I don't remember it happening this way, where Oklahoma and Texas both have a bye week leading into Red River Rivalry. So that's going to be a lot of fun to see. But anyways, going on to South Carolina, Ole Miss, going back to them, two teams that we're going to see after this week, and looking ahead, both teams that I think seem very vulnerable. And I'm liking the fact that I'm seeing ways that Oklahoma, if we can get some things rolling on offense, we've got an offensive line that's getting healthier, and then we'll talk about some guys that are coming back as well, that should be making a return in the Red River game as well. But we'll get to that and talking more about Oklahoma here in just a second. Going on to what it means for Oklahoma in the SEC, Alabama going down against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt owned this game. They were out in front the entire game. They had the lead, and they never let it go. They had the lead 13-7 in the first quarter, going on into the second quarter to close out, going into half. That was 23-14, so they're up by 9 points now at halftime. Bama made it very close in the third quarter, and it kind of seemed like, yep, that's what Bama's going to do. They're just going to come out, and they're going to find a way to win this one. That stuff happens where you get a scare against a small team like Vanderbilt, and you end up pulling it out, right? That happens with us as Oklahoma fans. Houston, we saw that with Houston, where it's a close game and you just don't know why, but you end up pulling out the win. That didn't happen for Alabama. They were behind the entire game, and you could tell the frustrations were building up. You saw it. It was just nonstop. And I could go on and say more about the frustrations that you saw from Alabama and from their players. Very much, disrespectful towards their coaches specifically. And I'm drawing a blank on the player who did that, who threw his mouthpiece. So if you guys know, please throw that out there. But throwing your mouthpiece and then refusing to come off the field, sending the guy back off the field. That's the kind of things that it just can't fly. And if Nick Saban was there, that's not going down. That stuff is not happening with Nick Saban at the helm. So it was crazy to see that Vanderbilt was able to just control this game the entire way through, and they're in the last 3 or 4 drives, they were still able to run the ball on Alabama. And then you look at that last drive when all Alabama really needs to do is stop Vanderbilt and force them, to punt the ball one more time. You might have one timeout. You might be out of timeouts, but you've got maybe a minute 14 left on the clock, something like that, maybe down to 45 seconds at the least, and just depending on how everything played out. And Vanderbilt was able to run the ball, and they were gashing through Alabama's defense, and you could tell the frustrations just built up so much with these players that they weren't able to get their heads back in the game. And I thought that was just incredible to see a young Alabama team who's very, they're a young team that plays like veterans, and they still look that way this year. And you saw that. You just beat Georgia, the way that they beat them, running out ahead 28-0. And of course you let them come back, but then you ended up closing it out and beating one of the best teams in the nation and securing your number 1 spot. And now you go into Vanderbilt, which should be an easy game. And I don't want to hear this whole, it's a trap game. I don't want to hear any of that, because Vanderbilt is not a trap game for Alabama. That's just not a trap game. So, starting off with this game, with what we saw from Alabama, what does that mean for Oklahoma? Well, for one thing, it kind of opens up the gates, because really you've only got Texas. I think Texas being the only so-called undefeated. Let me go out here real quick and look at the standings. I'm going to switch over. Okay, so you've got, I guess, Texas A&M. I forgot that they are 3-0 in the conference. Really, man, I'm forgetting who all Texas A&M played so far. See, so they played Notre Dame. So they are 3-0 in the conference. Wow, I did not realize that they've already played 3 SEC teams this far into the season. But you've really got Texas and Texas A&M. And then LSU. Those are the 3 undefeated in conference right now. I think LSU and Texas A&M have a tough road ahead. You're also going to see Texas and Texas A&M play against each other, so that'll kind of settle that out a little bit. So, I mean, what does this mean for Oklahoma? The fact that, we've got, Alabama, the number 1 team in the country, the number 1 team in the SEC. What does that mean that now Alabama drops down? Well, I mean, one thing, it opens up that door quite a bit, because even though you do still have those 3 undefeated in the conference, you still have some room here, and you're seeing vulnerabilities in a team that we've got to face later on in the season. And it's a team that, let's be honest, we're a little concerned about Alabama, right? And especially seeing how they played in the first 5 weeks. That's a tough team. So looking at Alabama and knowing that they dropped 1 to Vanderbilt, I mean, you've got to understand those frustrations are going to build, and they're going to have their week this week, to go. And who do they play? They play South Carolina, don't they, this week? Yeah, so they've got South Carolina, Tennessee, Missouri, LSU, Mercer, and then they come to Norman. So they've got a few weeks to forget about that Vanderbilt loss. I don't know. I still think Alabama's a very good team. Alabama's a team that we should be a little concerned about. Maybe not. They're not unbeatable, is what I'm saying. So that's one thing. And then just overall, I mean, looking at where it opens things up, the more top teams that you see, then the more top 10 teams that you see losing games, and we'll get to Tennessee here in just a moment. The more that you see those top 10 losing games, the more likely it is that a 9-3 team could slip their way into that college football playoff. And if you can slip your way into the college football playoff, anything is possible. I mean, if you've watched March Madness ever, anything is possible. So just throwing that out there, that the more that you see these top teams losing, we have a little bit of shakeup and a little bit of a cracked door, if you will. So, it's one of those things that you keep an eye on, and you notice what's going on around us. And especially when it's in the SEC, when you've got, Vanderbilt beating Alabama to give them an in-conference loss. I mean, Alabama has a pretty tough road ahead. I mean, I know I'm not very high on Missouri, but still Missouri, one of those teams that they've got to go against. They've got Tennessee coming up. South Carolina's probably going to get their butts handed to them. And so, and then of course Oklahoma, and they close it out with Auburn. They've got a tough road. I mean, they could lose one of those 3 with Tennessee, Missouri, and LSU. They could lose one of those 3. I think if anyone was going to do it, I think it would be Tennessee. If I had to put my money on it, it would probably be Tennessee to win out of those 3 teams. But one of those 3 teams could win, and now you're sitting with Alabama at 2 losses. If Oklahoma is able to keep themselves undefeated at that, or I guess through this stretch, if we're able to win these games up to that point, again, we're still in the talk. This is a lot of optimism. This is a lot of being hopeful, but this is an opportunity when you've got teams like Alabama losing. That's an opportunity for Oklahoma to bump up, especially on a bye week when we didn't even play, and then we got to bump up. Another way that this helps Oklahoma is Alabama's no longer number 1, and guess who's number 1 now? The Texas Shorthorns. So guess who we get to play now coming up this week? Not just the Texas Longhorns, not just a rival of ours, but the number 1 team in the nation. Win or lose, that's a much better thing for Oklahoma. Win or lose, that looks a lot better for Oklahoma playing the number 1 team in the nation. Whether you win that game, because if you win that game, we know exactly what that is. If you win that game against Texas, you're an underdog. You're not expected to win that game. And let's jump over real quick and see right now sitting at a 14-point underdog. If you win that game, you're looking like a much different Oklahoma in the eyes of the nation. Just throwing that out there. I think it's possible too. I mean, there's a lot of things that I look at with this Texas game coming up. We'll talk more about it throughout this week. But I'm seeing things in this matchup that we could capitalize on. I'm being very optimistic, but it's a tough one. But regardless, so even if we lose, if we're able to keep this a close game and you lose by less than 10 points is what I would hope for if we do lose against Texas, because it's a rivalry game. You should be able to keep it close because of that aspect, right? If you only lose by, let's say, 6 points, 8 points, something like that, that doesn't look so bad when it's number 1 beating you. Because guess what? Number 1 isn't supposed to lose to number 18. So they're not going to look at that and say, you're terrible, get out of here. Although that's going to be what happens when other people, other fans are talking about Oklahoma. But ultimately, when you look at that, if you lose to number 1, that's not that big of a deal. You beat number 1, though, that's a huge deal. That's a huge deal, and that really propels your program. It boosts your confidence. I think that's something that we've got to look forward to. But let's go ahead and go on to the last one that we're going to talk about. I guess I can bring up that Florida beat UCF. That was impressive for Florida. Good for them. I didn't really have much hope for Florida to be able to do anything. But the last one that we're going to talk about is Arkansas beating Tennessee. This is one that, man, I did not see this coming. I did not see this coming. I've been cheering for Tennessee. I'm going to keep on cheering for Tennessee. I want them to be undefeated. I don't want them to go on and start losing games now. I don't want them to lose to Georgia and lose to Alabama, because that makes us look worse when they start losing more games. So I like to see Tennessee keeping on moving on. So, that's something that, looking at it, I would love to see Tennessee keeping on moving, keeping on winning. And that's something I guess I didn't see, that I'm seeing an article pop up as an ad under this game that talks about Arkansas fans storming the field and tearing down the field goal posts. I don't know if Tennessee was quite worth doing that for, but you know what? Arkansas fans are crazy. They're allowed to have some fun. And personally, I love this tradition. I love that for fans, especially for teams. I would say teams like Vanderbilt, when Vanderbilt beats Alabama and you're able to take that win in and move on. That's pretty awesome. So Vanderbilt marching it 3 miles down Broadway all the way to the river. That was awesome. Might be a little bit of an over-exaggeration for Arkansas to be doing that to Tennessee. But going into this game, Nico Iamaleava just didn't have a good game. I thought he looked very uncomfortable this entire game, and I'm not really sure why. One moment while I take a quick drink. Gotta stay parched. Or I gotta keep myself from being parched, I should say. Gotta stay hydrated. But yeah, Nico just did not look good. Dylan Sampson was a bright spot for him. Obviously, he's a dude that is known for carrying this team. Dylan Sampson with 22 carries. That's something that Auburn wishes they could see from Jarquez Hunter. Had himself 138 yards, averaging over 6 yards a carry. Got himself a couple of touchdowns, carrying this team. And ultimately, what we see from this game, too, is you can't be mad at the Tennessee defense. You can't look at this Tennessee defense and think that they didn't do enough, because they holding Arkansas, which I will say, I think Arkansas, with Bobby Petrino calling plays, I think they're a very good offensive. They've got a lot of offensive potential. I won't say a very good offensive team, but they do have a lot of offensive potential. And seeing what they've got around on that offensive side, Taylor Green, a really good running kind of dual threat quarterback, being able to contain him is a very tough task for this Tennessee defense. But I can't get mad at this defense. You look at what they did, holding the Bobby Petrino team under 500 yards total offense, pretty good, and then under 150 yards rushing on offense. So this Tennessee defense, I can't look at this game and expect them to have done much better outside, of. I'm looking. I really don't know what else you really could have expected from them. I think that this Tennessee offense overall just not able to look the part and look like a Josh Heupel Tennessee offense with the young quarterback Nico Iamaleava, who everyone's been talking about how great of a quarterback he is, just not looking good. And then you go to that last play of the game, Nico should have been throwing that ball to the end zone. It doesn't matter if it gets intercepted, what the case is. I don't care what the coverage looks like. That ball does not go anywhere but the end zone. Not only that, but you can't be running towards out of bounds. The clock is expired. The time is expired. The clock is down to 0, and this is the last play of the game. In order to win the game, and you are down 5 points, you have to score a touchdown, and you run it to the outside and just kind of run towards run towards out of bounds and just give up. You concede the game at that point. So I thought that Nico Imaliava, he didn't live in that moment. He wasn't very clutch. There was no pressing. At the very least, you're dancing around and trying to keep yourself in bounds and fighting as much as you can for extra yards. Ultimately, you've got to have the knowledge. I know you're a young quarterback, but you've got to have the knowledge to know in that situation, you've got to be throwing that ball to the end zone. And he didn't. So, this sucks for Oklahoma fans for a couple of reasons, because really, I guess just for one reason, that Tennessee beat Oklahoma, and now they lose to Arkansas, who's just not a great team. I will say, I think it's kind of funny watching Arkansas perform this way so far this season, sitting at 4-2, 2-1 in the conference. Just because Sam Pittman's on that hot seat right now. Fans want him out if he performs bad this year. I think fans want to keep Sam Pittman around personally. That's what it feels like to me. It just feels like Sam Pittman is Arkansas. He feels like the perfect fit for Arkansas. So I think fans want him to do good. They don't want to see him leave, but they want him out that door as soon as possible if he's not going to perform. And he's going to perform just well enough where you say, man, can you fire a guy for going 7-5? Can you fire a guy for going 8-4 in this situation? Tough situation for Arkansas right now, but hate to see that for the Volunteers. I would love to see them propel. I would love to see them come out and looking at the rest of the Tennessee schedule. They've got Florida upcoming this week. Then they've got Alabama, but it's going to be at home, so you get to host Alabama. We know what happened a couple of years ago. Let's see if we can see a repeat of that. Then you've got Kentucky, who can't be taken lightly. I don't think Kentucky's just some team you can roll right over. Mississippi State, you should be able to handle that one just fine. And then you've got to go to Georgia. That is not an easy game whatsoever. And then you've got UTEP, and then at Vanderbilt. Don't take that one lightly either. Your in-state rival, right? Don't take that one lightly, because we know what could happen if you do take it lightly. So ultimately, yeah, I'm looking at Tennessee. You don't have an extremely easy road ahead. I would love to see them just finish it off, keep on winning, just because that looks best for Oklahoma. And if Oklahoma is able to keep themselves, let's say we do end up going 9-3, like I said, with all of this movement and all these teams losing in the top 10 right now, and with all of this chaos that's happening, it would not be totally unlikely for a 3-loss team to make it in that 12-team playoff this year. Just throwing that out there. So if Oklahoma is able to be that 9-3 team, there's things that could happen. You could at least get yourself a little further, and it would feel good to at least get a playoff win at this point. That I will take that much, although we want more. We want more. So obviously, if you're able to push a little bit more, then you're able to kind of dream a little bit. Not a whole lot going in the live chat. I know it's a kind of an odd time for us to be going live, but Larry says, in recent years, Caleb and Gabriel both were able to run Texas. If we're going to win, Hawkins will need to approach superstar status with his legs for OU to have a chance of winning this game. Yeah, Larry, I agree with you. I think the big part for Texas is being able to stop that dual threat quarterback. That's something that we've seen was a struggle for them in years past. Dylan Gabriel had a phenomenal game. Yeah, you saw that with Caleb Williams. I think the first play that he came in on 4th and 1 takes it all the way to the house, something like 49 yards all the way to the house, 50 yards all the way to the house, whatever that huge play was. And then, of course, being able to use his arm in big moments, that beautiful pass, but more beautiful catch by Marvin Mims in the end zone to be able to haul that in and keep your foot in. And then, of course, going back to last season, Dylan Gabriel just roasting him with his legs. Yeah, so absolutely. I totally think that's something to look forward to. I do agree with you. I think Michael Hawkins is going to have to use his legs and kind of keep them honest on defense. Ultimately, when we look at this Texas game coming up, going forward into the Red River rivalry, we will have more content to talk more about that specifically. So please stay tuned for that. We will have much more this week on Red River rivalry. It is hate week, so make sure to throw those horns down. Go to the merch shop at Soonerspotlight.com/shop. Go over to Soonerspotlight.com. Check out everything we got over there. Get yourself some Sooner gear, just to kind of support the show. Guys, we thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. Boomer.